Let me see. Okay, Mac. I just opened uh, this article. I briefly glossed over it, and it seems to me that the author of this short article. I thought it was going to be a lengthy one, but it seems like he has more questions than anything. And some of the things that he's asking uh, may be not necessarily, but maybe a little bit more inappropriate and incomplete in comparison to the context. But I think I see where I think I see where he's going with what he's trying to say. His opening statement, he says, in a comparative economic system or systems, to some extent, a dying field. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that. But he says there's often a distinction may be drawn between state capitalism and state socialism. Both are capitalistic at heart, but under each system, the government owns industries such as railroads and the post office. Well, I mean, part of that is you have to really, uh, really get down to, I guess, some of the definitions of some of these things. And you may have heard me say this before, that definitions are extremely important because if you don't specify, or if the person that you're speaking to or trying to get a point across to is not understanding the definition of something you mean, then it really destroys the context. Like, for instance, if I said republicanism, most people would think, necessarily the Republican Party, but I could be talking about a system that values laws. Okay, so when he talks about the general aspect of state capitalism and state socialism. State socialism is basically socialism. The definition of socialism is really, if I remember correctly, is that the state or the government owns and controls the means of production. State capitalism is a little bit different. State capitalism is just that the government has influence in industry and business, but just about anything capitalist or capitalistic, if you will, is going to be privately owned. They're going to be owned by either an individual or a group of individuals. So that's the first distinction that I can see in I guess where he's getting. So he goes on to say, state socialists run these enterprises to maximize social good, and that's pretty much true. Okay, it's kind of like a little bit what I spoke about in the video yesterday, about it's more or less a utilitarian philosophy or principle that the modern state or even modern welfare state is predicated upon. There are arguments against it. I gave one just as just kind of a general argument, but there's a lot of things that you can make that refutation to that utilitarian principle analogous to. Um, let's see. It says to maximize the social. They do it to maximize the social good. The post office might be forced to deliver to unprofitable areas, and that might not be good for doing so. Thus, profit maximization is not necessarily the main goal of state socialist organizations. Well, you know, it's from the state socialist apparatus. I mean, if it's going to be about the general will or general good, they're going to look at it from the respect of, well, how can we maximize the most good? Not everybody's going to benefit. It's just trying to maximize the most good for the most people. Profit industries, they will only go, typically anyway, where they can profit. And this might not be a fair comparison because when in the article he's talking about things like the post office and utility companies and so on. What he doesn't mention is though we have the Sherman Antitrust Act of the early 20th century, it doesn't matter. These things are considered natural monopolies. And these are natural monopolies. Just look up the term natural monopolies and it'll give you more of a comprehensive definition than what I'll give you. But basically, a natural monopoly is raised by a state, and there's really no way for any entity outside of that to penetrate it. It's something that the government or the state is going to function. on behalf of, or let's just say for the benefit of people, like for instance, like a utility company. This is why some people, people can't open their own utility company. And it's actually kind of a libertarian argument. People that are pissed off with the utility company for whatever reason, they feel that they can do a much better job than they can. But they aren't able to get into that market because it's controlled and dominated and controlled by the government. So it's kind of like a closed door. But the other comparative example I was going to give is like, let's say multinational companies. We'll take Walmart, for example. Some of this is going to get a little bit into the political economy and maybe even sociology of law. Maybe a little bit. I'll try to stay away from those areas as much as I can, but I do see parallels with it. Take Walmart, for example. They may go to like some small country, Indonesia or whatever, parts of Africa. It doesn't matter. But before they go there, before they consider doing business there, they're going to look at the legal system. I think it was a sociologist by the name of Donald Black talks about this. Like capitalist systems or any system that has the most laws tend to be the most well organized. So if you're a Walmart person and you want to build a factory in Indonesia, you want to see what kind of type of government they have. What kind of laws they have, because you don't want to put a factory there. And today it's your factory, and then tomorrow it's their factory. There's like some warring faction there, or there's some like old written rules that says that invaders from outside nations get claim on any property that comes into their country or their borders or land or something like that. So that's another distinction that he doesn't really delve into too much in this article, which is fine. State capitalists would operate in these firms to maximize profit. I will address that, even though he says state capitalist. Again, like I said before, state capitalism is when the government has a huge influence into markets and so on, and the economy and so on. The reason why people get mad when they look at the dazzling profits the corporations make, and there is such a thing in economics called profit maximization. The reason for that is that you don't have a crystal ball. So let's just say you're a multinational. You want to make as much money as you can for today, and that is operating under basically in more or less capitalist understanding, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So what if tomorrow the government, for whatever reason, says, hey, I'm sorry, but we have to raise your taxes. Are you able to weather that storm? Or let's just say, you have a factory making blue sneakers, and suddenly tomorrow people are they're going to the red sneaker factory to buy their stuff. Are you able to conform to that, or are you able to weather that storm? So under a capitalist model, everything is for now and is for today. So as a capitalist, their job is to stay in business, for the most part, by any means legally necessary. And I say that even though there are companies or firms that act maybe not for the good of people, but they're acting in their own good. And really, for the most part, that's their job. So also, it seems to, I think he says that at least in some aspects of debate between Democrats and Republicans on how to run a government is really a debate over how the government should operate enterprise. Well, I don't know. That's really hard to say in the respect that he's mentioning it, because regardless if it's a socialist entity or capitalist entity, there's so many other factors we can consider. Like for instance, let's just say something like maybe like federalism, cooperative federalism, and coercive federalism. So let's just say under a capitalist model, for whatever reason your company's in trouble and you need help. Okay, so you go to the federal government and ask for money, and they say, okay, this is a pretty good business opportunity. We can get some more tax money from you, maybe, or you can do this or that for us, and we'll give you this money. That's more cooperative. Okay, coercive would be that the government says, hey, I see you need this money, and you can have it, but you can only have it under these circumstances. You have to change this, or you have to change that, and so on. And this can work This is still pretty much mutually exclusive, or not mutually exclusive, between a capitalist model or a socialist model. The difference is, on a socialist model, it's all run by the government. It's just basically the state government running to, let's just say, the federal government for money. The idea of coercion or cooperation can work the same way. And notice he finishes with saying something to the effect that these are a few areas that he's kind of unfamiliar with, which is fine. I like I said, I get overall basically what he's saying. I guess at this level, there's a few things I would recommend reading. For something like this, when it has anything to do with the economy, macroeconomic theory, just in its general sense, is something to follow up on. It goes into other aspects, like international markets, exchange banks, and stuff like that. But a lot of that stuff has an important role in the economy here, or at least in the things that are behind what this article is actually, in a way, I would say, tacitly speaking to. And another thing probably to look at is there's another book, John Sutton, Law and Society. There's some interesting chapters from some of the people I mentioned the other day, Durkheim, Max Weber, even Karl Marx, because law has a very important role in let's just say a capitalist system, kind of like I mentioned earlier. Donald Black says, well, the more laws, the more organized the system is, and that is by definition. So capitalism has become more of a rational system. Somebody like Emile Durkheim, which had looked at the evolution of societies and their economic systems and what their approaches to law were. For Marx, the problem was the understanding that he had was the economy was this whole understanding as far as his path to law. For Weber, it was political domination, and he talks about traditional societies to contract societies and so on. Durkheim more or less looks at simple societies, which he believed that solidarity was the way to law. So he looked at simple societies that he called mechanical, and let's just say big, well-run, organized societies like you have here in the United States, which were considered organic. And I know some of these things kind of sound like disjointed, but I would imagine if you read some of these things independently, you would see how it really all comes together in some ways. Like I said, I may be missing a few things in this video. I just opened this and kind of breezed through it. I thought I would just do another quick video just to give you just a little, at least some context. So if you want to put this in your discussion group, that's fine. If anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to respond by leaving either a video or type comment or whatever, and we can have a conversation about it. All right, thanks.